Hey guys, my name is Arnav Chakravarti and you're listening to the podcast is Wrestling Radio by Arnav Chakravarti. If you want to collab with me, then email us. Business email is available on YouTube in About section. And my podcast was available on Spotify, Google Podcast, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Amazon Music, YouTube, and many more. And absolutely, this podcast is related to wrestling related, such as New Japan Pro Wrestling, WWE, All Elite Wrestling, Impact Wrestling, Ring of Honor, and many more wrestling entertainment companies that I'm talking about the reviews, some spoilers, some everything that is gonna available on my podcast. So just listen. Bye. What's up, guys? My name is Arnav Chakravarti, and you are listening. My podcast is the Wrestling Radio by Arnav Chakravarti, and this is episode 7. Is the rise and fall of ACW. I'm talking about the ACW, and there are so many questions about that. Everybody needs to know that why did Extreme Championship Wrestling? You could just say that ECW original fail as a company. I don't know, but we will let you know. I will give such original things that you will got very shocking about that, because ACW was the most powerful and the most popular wrestling entertainment in all over the world, because everybody knows that ECW knows the hardcore industry, because you can use chair, ladders, you can use tables, their fire extinguishers, candlesticks, and thumbtacks, and fire also, petrol, and any equipments and fire extinguisher also available. But you can just say that there are so many extreme rules. Without extreme, no wrestling, because this is the main motto. Or you can just say that ECW made only for wrestling things. And have you ever noticed about that there are some matches, the ropes are replaced into the steel ropes, because the steel ropes were into bites like that. The steel ropes are attached with the teeth like that. If you touch, then your hand will cut into the ropes. You can just say about that, if your body was touched into the nail beaten ropes, nail bites teeth type ropes, then your body will fall as a bleeding like that, because these are the hardcore types. There's Sabu played and so many matches. Let's talk about the main things of the ECW elements. Okay, the main thing is there are several reasons why ECW ultimately failed, although it was successful for a time. Yes, it was absolutely awesome, and it was absolutely true that ECW was so successful in time. You can just see that on 90s, on 1998 or 1999, you can just see that there are WWE, WWF versus WCW and ECW matches on Survivor Series. On Invasion, WCW and ECW win for a time, because it was WWF, but you can just say that it was placed on WCW Invasion, and it was lost on Survivor Series match. Or I'm just talking about the WCW and ECW was lost by WWE on Survivor Series match due to the winning of Cordangle, because Cordangle was supporting ECW in this group. But I can just say about that Cordangle was originally not in ECW, but it was originally in WWF, because Cordangle never debuted on ECW and now never debut on WCW. But after a long time, after the return of the ECW, Paul Heyman brought back the ECW, and you can just say about that Kurt Angle, after the return of the ECW, Kurt Angle then debut on ECW. You can just say about that. Okay, the main thing is the biggest reason it failed is because it never had enough money to truly compete with WWE and WCW. Todd Gordon, the real founder of the promotion, invested money of his own to get the promotion started, and actually he gave it a good start. Unlike Paul Heyman, Todd Gordon was good at managing money and used his money fairly wisely in the early days of ECW. He was the man who was responsible for ECW's ability to grow from just an ordinary indie into an indie that was beginning to get talked about in its area as the best indie in the Philadelphia area or even the best one in Pennsylvania. You can just say about that I just too awesome. There are some names in the country that I am from India and everybody should say who is Pennsylvania. Okay, that's this is not a man. I can just say about that Pennsylvania is the country. You can just say that Pennsylvania is a city in US. But I can just say that I love Pennsylvania, I love Philadelphia. So it's good, sounds good. Okay. His first great idea was to recruit Eddie Gilbert as the company's first booker. Gilbert, a veteran of wrestling's territory system, had a wealth of knowledge from having worked around the country's various territories, but especially from working for Bill Watts in the UWF, formerly Mid-South Wrestling. Mid-South was a groundbreaking organization in the 80s, which actually was the closest thing there had ever been to an ECW. Mid-South's success was due to the great TV shows it put on, considered among the best, if not the best, of the early mid-80s. Cowboy Bill Watts was the creative force behind Mid-South and later the promotion named the Universal Wrestling Federation, which it grew into in an attempt to sound more like a national promotion than a regional one. Watts' philosophy was to give the fans what they wanted: the mud, the blood, and the beer. Sound like ECW. It was the forerunner to it. They had wild, bloody matches and realism. They never made the mistake of getting cartoonish or insulting the fans' intelligence. Watts was so meticulous about making sure that didn't insult the intelligence of the fans that he actually fined wrestlers for doing things in the ring that didn't make sense. For example, Watts would fine a wrestler for turning his back on his opponent. Imagine how different today's WWE would be if they enforced that rule. It would be unrecognizable. Watts also fined wrestlers for doing what he calls scissor moves, like a wrestler raking his fingernails down the back of his opponent. Watts hated that and said, "If you do that, you better leave scratch marks on his back or I will fine you." That was where Eddie Gilbert's knowledge of booking realistic, intense, bloody wrestling matches came from, and Watts was the man he learned from the most. Gilbert got a name in Philadelphia area from having some wild matches with Terry Funk, including a chain match that was considered revolutionary for its time. Gilbert was also ECW's original top babyface. You could just say babyface like that. Okay. Todd Gordon made another brilliant decision in hiring Terry Funk as the promotion's top heel. That was the initial foundation of ECW, then standing for Eastern Championship Wrestling. They hired the Public Enemy, a tag team which became incredibly popular in ECW. Paul Heyman eventually wrestled control of ECW away from Eddie Gilbert and renamed it Extreme Championship Wrestling during a landmark turning point match in the promotion's history, in which Shane Douglas, who had won an NWA tournament to become the NWA's new heavyweight champion, did one of the most courageous things a wrestler has done business-wise, because it could have ruined him had it had gone wrong. In a move that shocked the indie scene and the NWA in general, Shane Douglas threw down the NWA title and hosted the ECW heavyweight title overhead as he cut a legendary promo where he insisted that he refused to accept the torch from an organization that died. Rest in peace. Short from RIP. 7 years ago, instead, he declared himself the Extreme Championship Wrestling Heavyweight Champion of the world. The real ECW was born. I can just say about that ECW. Everybody knows that ECW came from 20s, but it's absolutely wrong. ECW was an oldest wrestling association, but you can just say that ECW was from 90s and 80s. There was no WWE, but it's from WWF. They're falling from 90s, but WWE eventually bought ECW and WCW. I don't know what the hell is going on, but I think it's a good thing that WWE needs a proper business, because this company is not running very well. I don't know, but it would be running very well, because what if Paul Heyman does it, because Paul Heyman deserves to be on ECW. I completely shocked that Paul Heyman came on ECW. He faced as a manager. You can just say that. I can just say about that, I love ECW chance. Do you know, I want to tell you something about that Paul Heyman came on Evolve Wrestling. After he came from Evolve Wrestling, the shocking appearance, Paul Heyman, everybody was chanting on ECW, ECW, ECW. I was completely afraid. I was not afraid of ECW chants, but I really love to listen ECW, because I want ECW should bring back, because I didn't want to loss of ECW. I didn't want to see the loss of ECW, but I can just say about that ECW was a good wrestling event in wrestling industry, because it promotes so many hardcore matches, and nobody can say about that ECW is the most worst match ever. But there are some criticisms like that Vince McMahon was a critics, big critics, high and huge critics, that you can just say about that. I think it is over. WWE should handle this. I don't know, but I can just say about that. Fuck you, Vince. I'm just kidding you like that. Okay. Paul Heyman gave Douglas the option to not to do that off. He thought it was too disrespectful to the NWA, and it's to Douglas' credit that he did it. The Heyman proceeded to book a series of matches between Douglas and the legendary former NWA heavyweight champion Terry Funk. Managed to gain the ECW title from Douglas for a short time, and then lost it back to Douglas in the next game-changing event in ECW's history, the legendary three-way match between Funk, Douglas, and Savoy in a 60-minute match. That was the match that turned ECW into a hardcore promotion. That event, held on May 2, 1994, drew 1,000 people and also featured future ECW stars such as the Sandman, Tommy Dreamer, and the Tasmaniac, later known as Taz. ECW was taking off. If I talking about who is the Tasmanian, Tasmanian is Taz. He is right now in AEW. That he brought back FTW championship, which was this championship was belong to ECW. This championship was reborn. You can just say about that this FTW championship belt was introduced on ECW during 90s, and after the return of the ECW, this championship was never returned, and after a long time Taz has decided to bring this FTW championship on ECW, because if you watch AEW, you can just feel about that there's some mixed up with the WCW elements and the ECW elements. You can just say the ECW part from Taz and the WCW part from Sting, Tony Schiavone, Chris Jericho, or everything like that. But I can just say about that, I think AEW should bring the ECW hardcore elements that should boost up the ratings. Oh yeah. Okay, let's talk about it. Over the next 3 years, EW was a revolutionary force in pro wrestling. It truly was a revolution in that it presented pro wrestling in a way never done before in the USA. Angels storylines that appealed to adults, wild, bloody matches that featured wrestlers doing hardcore things such as putting each other through tables and cutting edge promos. Their top heel in 1994 through 1996 was the franchise Shane Douglas, who retained his ECW while facing a string of opponents including legendary wrestlers as Ron Simmons. You can just say I can just say if Ron Simmons didn't know, you can just say it's Farouk from WWF. Road Warrior Hawk and Shirley Blanchard. Is it Tessa Blanchard's father or not? I don't know. Let's see later lifetime. Defeating wrestling who had been big stars in national promotion gave Douglas and ECW credibility. Douglas also innovated the shoot style promo in repeatedly calling out Ric Flair and would mix reality with storyline. Douglas would talk of his real life heat with Flair, especially in the far ahead of his time. 30-minute promo named Evolution of a Franchise, in which Douglas criticized Ric Flair for holding him back because Flair didn't want to pass the torch to the next generation of wrestlers. Douglas said, Ric Flair, I hate your guts. I hate everything you stand for. Meanwhile, one of the greatest feuds in pro wrestling history, Raven vs. Tommy Dreamer. A 3-year feud was the hottest thing in ECW and got both Raven and Dreamer over as genuine stars. The Gangsters was embroiled in a feud with the Public Enemy, which was also very successful and was the beginning of New Jack becoming a star in his own right. ECW and everything it needed to become the force. It became over the next 3 years, and ECW had some of the best wrestling TV shows and live matches ever seen during that time. Oh, yes. I just love to see ECW again. If WWE brought back the legendary ECW title, or you can just say about that, if WWE brought back the ECW elements, I will definitely watch. It will help to boost up the ratings. I think WWE should bring back the hardcore element. Okay. Then the next step was getting in pay-per-view, and in April of 1997, ECW and its first pay-per-view, which was wildly successful by independent promotion standards by the November to Remember 1997 pay-per-view, in which the franchise Shane Douglas won for the third time the ECW World Heavyweight title and drew over 3,000 fans to the Golden Dome in Pittsburgh. ECW was beginning to be considered and just the top indie in the country. But competition for WWE and WCW. For the first time, ECW was being mentioned as in the same league as them, as one of the big three. What went wrong? The worst thing that happened in that WWE and WCW would offer ECW stars contracts which ECW didn't have the money to match. It's very hard to stay successful when companies are raiding your roster for its best talent. You could just say the best talent. ECW lost Shane Douglas to WCW as well as the rest of the original triple threat, which had consisted of Shane Douglas, Chris Benoit, and Dean Malenko. WCW also took the public enemy away from ECW. The other big stars of EVW had to step up and did. Raven, Tommy Dreamer, The Sandman, Taboo, Rob Van Dam, Taz, the Dudley Boys, the Gangsters, and the Eliminator Zone became top ECW stars. I think this is not a double, it would be Sabo, okay. I think this article was wrong written. I just don't spell that, okay. Eventually, they too would be lured away, and Paul Heyman, the genius behind ECW, couldn't make new stars as quickly as his old stars were being lured away by WWE and WCW for amounts of money Heyman couldn't match. Finally, they received what they absolutely had to have if they were going to compete on national level and national TV deal with TNN. You can just say that the full form of TNN, the Nashville Network. Sadly, TNN never understood ECW. It forced ECW to cut its best material from the show because they saw it as too extreme, and the national viewers on TNN saw a very watered down ECW. The final blow was when WWE took ECW's heavyweight champion Taz and ECW's World Tag Team Champion the Dudley Boys in one fell swoop. Heyman earned the title on Rhino, who, while promising, was just too green to be their champion. Also, TNN never ran advertisements for ECW. Instead, it incessantly ran ads for its own creation. TNN's roller derby. Heyman got so upset with them with their relationship completely broke down to the point where Heyman was trying to get TNN to throw ECW off the air so that could be free to sign with another network. Sadly, that never happened. Once TNN did finally drop ECW, its roster was so depleted and Heyman was in such debt, hadn't paid wrestlers in months, and owed Shane Douglas $70,000 and owed RVD $300,000. It was the end of ECW. They couldn't get another network in time, and ECW went under as a result. While ECW wasn't successful in ever seriously challenging WWE or WCW, it played a monumentally important role in influencing WWE to take an approach in which Vince McMahon, which had become complacent and bereft of ideas, simply stole all of Heyman's best ideas. WWE, armed with ECW's ideas and to an extend their wrestling style, managed to avoid going bankrupt and turned the tide after being beaten for 72 weeks in the ratings. WWE finally won the ratings on week 73. It took off from there, putting WCW out of business at approximately the same time ECW went bankrupt. By the spring of 2001, WWE was the only truly national big league pro wrestling promotion, and it has remained so ever since, despite horribly declining quality over the years, but that is another story. I can just say about the WWE ditched WCW, WWE ditched ECW. So there was the major things that everybody who can't believe that. Okay. And I can just say that WWE wants to destroy the ECW and WCW elements, because if ECW and WCW was gone, they things. And you can just say that I got some new things that 1 year later they did it again, but not in celebration of the old company, but to launch the new version of ECW under the WWE banner. You can just say that ECW returned once again, but you can just say that this ECW, the new returning ECW, was under a WWE contract because it is under a WWE banner. You can just say that WWE ECW. Sounds like not interesting because the new returning ECW was not so hardcore. If you didn't bring the ECW elements like hardcore, they're deserving it, then what's the meaning of the ECW? This match is not gonna be extreme, but I don't know. ECW folded its doors in 2001, but even today there are smatterings of cheers whenever Tommy Dreamer heads to the ring. ECW, ECW. Those cheers aren't just for the innovator of violence, they are paying homage to a bygone era. In 2004, the WWE released an excellent rise and fall of ECW DVD that easily became the company's best-selling release. According to legend, Rob Van Dam had suggested to Vince McMahon an idea for a reunion show. He eventually gave the okay, and Tommy and Heyman first started on putting together 2005's One Night Stand. You can just say that there are 5 best and 5 worst feuds of 2019. That number 10 is It Wasn't Extreme. Number 9, Heyman didn't have control. Number 8, Only One Title. Number 7, Vince didn't understand. Number 6, Talent Exchange. Number 5, PG era. What? The ECW didn't like PG era, but why WWE had put ECW PG era? You can just know the parental guidance era. I don't like the PG era. Please release like that. Number 4, not enough ECW on the roster. You can just say that some ECW wrestlers like RVD, Tommy Dreamer, Sabu the Sandman, Balls Mahoney, Just Incredible, Rhino. There are some ECW originals. You can just say that Dudley Boss. But if you put WWE wrestlers as Kurt Angle, you just say Big Show. That doesn't belong to the that doesn't belong to ECW. I think it would be drafted like that. I don't know. Okay. The third thing is ECW stars had to change. And number 2 is wasn't its own brand, and number 1, it wasn't counterculture. Yeah, it's absolutely the goodest. But I can see that CM Punk debuted on ECW and he rocked the world. He shocked the world. You can just say that CM Punk debuted in WWE as a ECW brand, but you can just say that CM Punk is a megastar. He made his career in Impact, ROH, and WWE. Has changed his career, he changed his style. If he was not WWE, but I can just say that CM Punk was the most hardcore wrestler ever in ECW era. Okay, that's the main reason why ECW failed and why ECW, you can just say that the rise and fall of ECW. That's the ending of the episode 7. I can just say about that, if you want to follow my podcast, then please follow on listen on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Stitcher, and many more. I can just say about it. And my podcast was also available on iTunes. Okay, so subscribe, follow, and listen freely to my podcast. Those wrestling lovers and those who didn't love wrestling lovers, then it's your own terms. I am not gonna forcing it. If I was in a wrestling podcast and if I was in YouTube like that, and I can just say that it doesn't depend upon, it depends upon your attitude. But I can just say about that, it's your own terms. Do it and be a star like that. I can just say about that, thanks. And again say that United Kingdom was listening less than one, but I see records are came in day to day, night to night like that. Okay, but I could say that the ECW should watchable. The old eras always be old eras, and the new era was always be a new era. New era can't feel like the ECW eras, but if you make them, you could be the champion. You could be a mega star like that. Okay, so that's it. That's all for today's guys, and I will see you in the next episode. Take care. Bye bye. See you later on the next episode. Bye.